Now, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman as we return to my conversation with the activist, scholar, author, Noam Chomsky, professor of linguistics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I asked for his assessment of President Obama's presidency.
In many ways, it's a little worse than what I expected, but I didn't expect anything. Actually, I wrote about Obama before the primaries, just looking at his web page. So take the Middle East. Take a look at his web page before the primaries. A lot of stuff about the Middle East. Most of it is how his undying love for Israel, which just overcomes everything else. There's almost no mention of the Palestinians in the phrase. This was, remember the time, this is the right after the last of the Israeli invasions of Lebanon, actually the fifth in 2006. And one of the things he's proud of about the Middle East, and he boasts about, is that he says, in fact, he did very little in the Senate, but one of the things that he did was co-sponsor a resolution in the midst of the war, insisting that the United States do nothing that might impede the Israeli attack on Lebanon until it reaches its objectives, and censuring Syria and Iran because they're allegedly supporting the resistance to the Israeli attack. That's his one great achievement with regard to the Middle East. So nothing that's happened there is any surprise. With regard to other issues, he was, as he himself put it sometimes, kind of a blank slate. He didn't say anything. There was vague talk about all kind of nice things. I don't usually admire Sarah Palin, but when she was making fun of this hokey, changey stuff, she was right. There was nothing there. And it was understood by the people who run the political system. So it's a great secret that the U.S. electoral system is mainly public relations extravaganzas. They keep away from issues. It's a sort of a marketing affair. The people who run it are the advertisers. And they had their national convention right after the 2008 election, and revealed that they understood perfectly what was going on. They gave Obama the award for the best marketing campaign of the year. If you go to the business press, they were reporting how executives were really excited. I mean, we have this new model as to how to, delude people. We used to use the Reagan model. Now we can use the Obama model for our delusional systems that we construct, which is pretty much what the PR industry is about. So they captured it properly. I mean, there are a couple of things that he did that are, I think, he had a couple good appointments to the NLRB, National Labor Relations Board. There are a few actions here and there that you can kind of clap.
He just announced his support of same-sex marriage, first U.S. president to do that.
Well, not quite. Yes, he did, but he said it has to go to the states. So the states' rights version, that kind of means states can do what they like. He said something.
And 30 states have constitutional amendments against same-sex marriage.
Another one just a couple of days ago, yeah. But I mean, I'm glad he said it, but it's a pretty safe stand. Labor, there was a huge effort by the labor movement to get him into office. And the first thing he did was kick him in the face. No card check. In fact, what happened with the health program was quite interesting. As you know, of course, there was a very important senatorial election in January 2010 after Senator Kennedy died in Massachusetts, liberal state. And what was at stake was not just Kennedy's position, but the filibuster-proof majority, which is quite critical. Well, the Democrats lost that election, which is pretty dramatic, and it was carefully analyzed. There was, first of all, a ton of money pouring in to support the Republican candidate who was a kind of a vacuum. I don't know if you followed it. I'm Scott Brown, and here's my truck. That was the campaign. But was quite interesting was and in the suburbs, more or less affluent suburbs, voting was pretty high. In the downtown areas, the urban areas where the working class and poor people live, voting was quite low. What was quite interesting was the union vote, which was analyzed. Union members, the majority of them voted against, for the Republican, meaning against Obama. Why? That was investigated too. They were furious. They had worked really hard to put Obama into office. He broke all his promises to them. But furthermore, the health plan, one of the promises was there'd be some kind of national health care. And I think he could have achieved that. For example, support for the public option was about 3-2, I think. He made any effort, could have gotten it through. But not only did he not put that through, but the one thing that he insisted on was cutting back what were called Cadillac health plans. It actually should be called Chevrolet health plans. And those are the health plans that union workers had fought for years. You look at the history of the American labor movement, it's kind of abandoned all sorts of things all along the way. The rights of workers in the workplace, all kinds of things. But it insisted, it didn't make one gain. It made a compact with management, kind of a contract that they'd get good benefits, health benefits for themselves, not for the country. Of course, a compact like that lasts only as long as business decides to keep it. When they give it up, it's over. But they did have reasonable health plans for themselves. Those are the Cadillac health plans. So the one thing Obama wanted to do was to kill the health plans that they had sacrificed for and fought for 50 years, giving up plenty of other things in the struggle, and they were pretty angry about it, and understandably. And I think if you look at other constituencies, it's approximately the same. Take, say, environmental issues. His attitude toward the tar sands and the fracking, the XL pipeline, is characteristic. So in his State of the Union address, last State of the Union address, he emphasized the fact that we're in a great position. We have maybe 100 years of energy independence ahead of us using these methods which are going to destroy the environment. So who knows what things will be like in 100 years, maybe unlivable. But it sounded nice, so I'll put off the decision for a couple of months and just have the southern part of the pipeline built, not the part that crosses the border. That'll come next while you're not looking. But it's been that way on issue after issue.
And yet, it's under President Obama, or you might say because of President Obama, that the Occupy movement has blossomed in this country. Talk about the significance of Occupy.
Well, the Occupy movement it was a big surprise. If anybody asked me a year ago, is this possible, I would have said it's crazy, don't even try. But it lit a spark, took off. There are now Occupy movements in thousands of American cities spread overseas. I was in Australia recently, went to the Occupy movement in Sydney, Melbourne, there's one in Hong Kong, everywhere. And there's parallel movements in Europe. It's the first, and it's very significant, I think, already, and it's only been around for a couple of months, so you can't talk about huge achievements. But there are two kinds of achievements which I think have already had an effect that probably is permanent, but anyway significant. One is they just changed the national discourse. So issues that had been marginalized, they're familiar, but you didn't talk about them, like inequality, shredding of the democratic process, financial corruption, environmental issues, all these things. They moved to the center of discussion. In fact, you can even see it from the imagery that's used. You read about the 99% and the 1% in the conservative press, the business press. That's just changed the way lots of people are looking at things. In fact, the polls show that concern over inequality among the general public rose pretty sharply after the Occupy movement started, very probably as a consequence. And there are other policy issues that came to the fore, which are significant. The other aspect, which in my estimation may be more significant, is that the Occupy movement spontaneously created something that doesn't really exist in the country. Communities of mutual support, cooperation, open spaces for discussion. They just developed health system, library, common kitchen, just people doing things and helping each other. That's very much missing. There's massive propaganda. It's been going on for a century, but picking up enormously, that you really shouldn't care about anyone else. You should just care about yourself. You pay attention to yourself. We don't want anything else. You take a look at the attitudes among young people. It's polled, it's studied. It's remarkably high. So there was just a study that came out from the Harvard Public Policy Institute, found that pretty scary results, I thought. Less than, this is vote people, kids 18 to 24, college students basically. Less than half of them think that the government has a responsibility to deal with things like health care, food, and so on. When they say the government doesn't have a responsibility, that's kind of an interesting concept. If people thought they were living in a democracy, they would ask the question whether it's a public responsibility. But again, the propaganda system is designed to make you feel that the government is some alien force that's against you. You want to keep it away from your affairs. In a democratic society, it would be quite different. Like you can see it on April 15th. In a good measure of the extent to which a democratic system is functioning is how people feel about taxes. If you had a functioning democratic society, April 15th would be a day of celebration. It's the day on which we get together and fund the policies that we've decided on and that we've gotten our representatives to approve of. It's not what it is here. It's a day of mourning because this alien force is coming to steal things from you. Well, that's the kind of thing that the Occupy movement began to break. It said, yeah, we're in it together. That's what the old labor movement used to be. I mean, I can remember as a kid in the 30s when the situation was objectively much worse. But my family is mostly unemployed working class here in New York. But there was a sense of hopefulness, largely because of the labor organizing, which not only provided benefits to the people involved, but also made them part of something in which we can work together. The term solidarity wasn't just a vacuous term. And to rebuild that kind of thing, even if it's in small pieces of the society, can become very important. It can change the conception of how a society ought to function.
There's this whole issue of the posse comitatus, which most people agree with this act that U.S. soldiers should not be marching in the streets of the United States. But do you think authorities are getting around this now by militarizing the police, the kind of response we're seeing to the Occupy encampments all over this country? And, well, we'll see what happens as the protests build around the Democratic and Republican conventions, NATO, that's happening in Chicago and beyond.
Look, power systems don't say thank you and disappear. Of course they're going to respond. And they'll respond in various ways. I mean, what's happening now is wrong, but you ought to bear in mind that it's nothing like what happened in the recent past. So, for example, we don't have COINTELPRO. Remember, not many years ago, the National Political Police, the FBI, was organizing Gestapo-style assassinations of organizers, like Fred Hampton. Totally undermined the New Left. They tried to destroy the women's movement. They were all over the place. That's mostly the black movements are just pulverized by government repression. Well, what's happening now is bad, but it's not that. Sure, but there's going to be responses. And that's not the only case, after all. I mean, you look at Obama's programs, The part that really did surprise me, and I don't frankly understand it, is his attack on civil liberties, which is extreme. He's going beyond Bush. Some of the worst cases aren't even discussed. Like I think one of the worst cases is the Supreme Court case, Holder, the Humanitarian Law Project, which was initiated by the Obama administration, brought to the court by the administration, argued for the government by Elena Kagan, his latest Supreme Court appointee. Now, if you look at the decision, it was kind of welcomed by even the right-wing justices didn't accept all of it, but they accepted part of it. The crucial at issue was whether this group, Humanitarian Law Project, was criminally liable for giving material support to a terrorist group. The material support in question was legal advice to the PKK, Turkish group, giving them legal advice. That was material support. You read the wording, you and I, many people we know are liable under this. If we've met people who the government claims are terrorists, they don't have to give any reason for it. They just say you're a terrorist, like Mandela, for example. If you meet with them and you talk to them and you advise them, in fact, if you advise them to carry out nonviolent tactics, you're giving material support under the Obama interpretation of material support. Material support used to mean giving them arms or something, but it is extended by this to your speech to them. That's a very wide-ranging and ominous stand, and it was, I should add on the side, that the whole concept of on the terrorist list or being accused of a terrorist is something that should not be tolerated in a free society. I mean, I don't know, Mandela's a good example. If the government says you're a terrorist, that ends it. No recourse, no argument needed, no justification. They can put anybody they like on the terrorist list. It's the idea that they decide who's a terrorist is granting to state power something we'd never have in a free society. So not only is that, should that be intolerable, and that's of course not Obama, it goes way back, but extending the notion of material support to discussions with them, or advice to them, or I mean, it should be beyond discussion. It's barely discussed. There are others that are pretty bad too, like the attack on whistleblowers. I'm sure you know, more whistleblowers have been under attack by this administration than all of American history put together. This is an attempt to strengthen executive power and executive privilege, keep it secret from the population. And it goes, NDAA is another case. I mean, it's not his initiative, but he should have vetoed it, I think. But all of these extensions of state power and violations of civil rights are significant, but we should bear in mind that we're a lot freer than people here have been in the past, and certainly a lot freer than in other countries. So it's bad, but we shouldn't exaggerate. There's plenty of opportunities to do things.
MIT professor Noam Chomsky. If you'd like a DVD of today's show, you can go to our website at democracynow.org. Coming up, he speaks about WikiLeaks, the assassination of bin Laden, Occupy Latin America, and what gives him hope.
Revealed that they understood perfectly what was going on. They gave Obama the award for the best marketing campaign of the year. If you go to the business press, they were reporting how executives were really excited. I mean, we have this new model as to how to, delude people. We used to use the Reagan model. Now we can use the Obama model for our delusional systems that we construct, which is pretty much what the PR industry is about. So they captured it properly. I don't usually admire Sarah Palin, but when she was making fun of this hokey, changey stuff, she was right. There was nothing there. And it was understood by the people who run the political system. So it's no great secret that the U.S. electoral system is mainly public relations extravaganzas. You keep away from issues. It's a sort of a marketing affair. The people who run it are the advertisers. And they had their national convention right after the 2008 election, and dying love for Israel, which just overcomes everything else. There's almost no mention of the Palestinians in the phrase. This was, remember the time, this is the right after the last of the Israeli invasions of Lebanon, actually the 5th in 2006. And one of the things he's proud of about the Middle East, and he boasts about, is that he says, in fact, he did very little in the Senate, but one of the things that he did was co-sponsor a resolution in the midst of the war, insisting that the United
Now, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman as we return to my conversation with the activist, scholar, author, Noam Chomsky, professor of linguistics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I asked for his assessment of President Obama's presidency.
In many ways, it's a little worse than what I expected, but I didn't expect anything. Actually, I wrote about Obama before the primaries, just looking at his webpage. So take the Middle East. Take a look at his webpage before the primaries. A lot of stuff about the Middle East. Most of it is how his United States do nothing that might impede the Israeli attack on Lebanon until it reaches its objectives, and censuring Syria and Iran because they're allegedly supporting the resistance to the Israeli attack. That's his one great achievement with regard to the Middle East. So nothing that's happened there is any surprise. With regard to other issues, he was, as he himself put it sometimes, kind of a blank slate. He didn't say anything. There was vague talk about all kind of nice things.